Right mates, how's it going? In today's video, chapter 26 of Illidan by William King. Another short one unfortunately, but we're off to Auchindoun to get some souls. So let's get... Illidan made his way through the broken gates of Auchindoun. The huge mausoleum city looked as if it had once been a massive dome, like the helmet of some titan. And by helmet I mean bell end. But now it was all smashed up and derelict and stuff. He could feel the distant pulse of magic thrumming between the spirit towers that loomed over the bone wastes. The fact that he had no idea what purpose they served actually kinda disturbed him a little bit. And that wasn't the only thing that made him feel uneasy. The Fel Orcs that had accompanied him seemed to be bloody terrified. Something about this dead place penetrated even their rage-filled minds and filled them with dread, which was especially weird considering they were Shadowmoon Orcs and therefore accustomed to necromancy and dark sorcery. Some dreadful disaster had struck this city, that much was clear. According to Akama, it had once been a holy site, a burial ground for the Draenei. But something went wrong, and there were a whole bunch of rumours as to what. But Illidan knew the truth, thanks to the Skull of Gul'dan. The old schemer had dispatched a group of warlocks to search for artefacts here, and they'd accidentally unleashed a strange entity called Murmur. It had shattered Auchindoun and trashed the place, scattering the remains of countless dead across the desert. But whatevs. Illidan gave the signal, and so the Fel Orcs began their advance, marching into the dead city. They made their way up and down worn stairs, through dark, windy corridors, but the place was a bloody maze. Luckily, the scout then approached with a triumphant grin on his face. "We've found a way into the crypts, Lord." Great. Inside the crypts, the air smelled of ancient incense, old bones and putrefaction, and it wasn't pleasant. Also there were ghosts, translucent Draenei spirits mooching about, with empty eyes gazing into oblivion. But the sorcerer part of Illidan couldn't help but wonder, what are these ghosts really? Were they disembodied spirits? And if so, why were they just moving backwards and forwards, instead of acting under their own free will? Was it the magic of this place that was making them all act like a bunch of mindless dumbasses? But such speculation would have to wait. It was time to move on. Illidan's force pushed further, and realised the below-ground part of the city was just as much of a maze as the above-ground part, until eventually they entered a massive chamber, lined by gigantic sarcophagi, and Illidan sensed an eerie presence. A glowing form resembling that of a Draenei then appeared, irradiated a cold, life-sucking force. So, Illidan unleashed a bolt of energy and disintegrated the thing immediately. That was easy. However, a whole bunch more shimmering figures then emerged from the shadows, as well as some animated skeletons that rose from the ground. As they started to attack, Illidan noticed robed Draenei weaving dark magic around the edges of the room. It was their necromancy that was drawing the dead to life, but as the betrayer attempted to order some orcs to cut them down, the haunting sound of horns filled the air, no doubt summoning even more defenders to join the fight. All the more to feed to the Soul Cipher. The Fel Orcs drew up in ranks around the box containing the siphon, and Illidan leapt up into the air and landed atop the container. He then spoke a word of power, and the casket sprang open, revealing the artifact. Illidan couldn't help but feel quite proud of himself over this new creation of his, a device capable of somewhat recreating the effects of the ritual used to suck in souls at the hand of Gul'dan. When activated, the siphon would sweep the restless spirits haunting Auchindoun into its vortex, and then store their power. However, it wasn't going to be quite as simple as just pushing a button to switch it on. "Hold them for a few minutes, and triumph will be ours." Illidan knew he didn't have a lot of time. The Fel Orcs couldn't hold up under this much pressure for long, especially since even more robed Draenei had arrived, accompanied by even more skeletons. So he got started. Illidan invoked the artifact's might, creating a psychic link between himself and the device. The siphon held a fierce primitive sentience, so the moment he made contact, the little asshole began to drain the life from him. He quickly cast some spells of protection, and then began binding the entity to his will, as he would a demon. And then, some of the nearby skeletons disintegrated, which meant it was starting to work. For a second, some of the Fel Orcs cheered, before remembering they were currently fighting for their lives. A tidal wave of ghosts then got sucked into the artifact, but a quick glance showed Illidan that almost half of his bodyguards were down. He really wanted to aid them in their fight, but he needed to concentrate solely on the Soul Siphon, or else he could run out of control, explode, and kill them all. But holding this spell was absolute agony, so it wasn't like Illidan had the easier job or anything. More souls screamed into the siphon, and the necromancers finally realised what Illidan was actually doing. So they started to concentrate their attacks on him. Bolts of magic lanced into Illidan's side, causing him even more pain, and although this whole soul-sucking process was roughly 66% complete now, the betrayer could feel his control over the siphon was starting to slip, and also the Fel Orcs were down to a third of their original number. Was this it? Was he going to die in this place, having achieved absolutely nothing? Because if that's the case, he might as well just let the siphon explode. At least that way he'd have vengeance on his killers. But no, he wasn't going to give up. Not for shit. So he drew on his last reserves of will. Hold on. Agony racked Illidan's body as he fell to his knees and bolts of dark energy lashed him. But, just as the last remaining Fel Orc bodyguard fell to the ground, the siphon went, allowing Illidan to speak the final words of the spell. He then grabbed the device, opened a portal and cheesed it. And the last thing he heard was the enraged shouting of the necromancers being all like, "You bastard!" But then he was back, in his sanctum at the Black Temple, sweat pouring from his brow and barely able to breathe. The room swirled around, and then he passed out. And we're leaving it there! We should start keeping a tally of how many chapters in Warcraft books end with, "and then he passed out." It's happened in every book so far, hasn't it? As usual, link in the description if you're interested in buying this book. Also, there's links to my Discord server and my Patreon page too. If you enjoyed this, well, Jesus, what happened there? If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, all of that bollocks. And all that's left to say is, thanks for watching, and see ya!